Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Jake Weiss. I'm the Director of Family Ministries here at St. Andrews. Sometimes when I'm looking for inspiration for these posts, I look to the weekly scripture readings from the lectionary. And this week, the Old Testament passage comes from Isaiah chapter 6, which is the story of Isaiah being called by God to become a prophet. And that's what we're going to look at today. So this is an interesting story because in the first 5 chapters of the book of Isaiah, Isaiah has already been preaching prophetic messages to the people of Judah from God. And these words that Isaiah brings from God are mostly pretty harsh messages of judgment. Isaiah condemns the people of Judah for their idolatry, their worshiping of other gods along with Yahweh, and for their oppression and neglect of the most vulnerable people among them, the poor, widows, and orphans. And because of this idolatry and injustice, Isaiah warns them that an outside nation is going to come in and conquer them, and the people are going to be taken from their land into exile. So we have 5 chapters of this preaching from Isaiah, and then we get the story of Isaiah being called by God to be a prophet. And this is a fairly well-known story. Isaiah sees God sitting high on a throne, and God says, "Who shall I send?" And Isaiah famously says, "Here I am, send me." But what isn't nearly as well known is what happens next in the story, and that's what we're going to read today. This is Isaiah chapter 6, verses 9 through 13. And God said, "Go and say to this people, keep listening, but do not comprehend. Keep looking, but do not understand. Make the mind of this people dull, and stop their ears and shut their eyes, so that they may not look with their eyes and listen with their ears and comprehend with their minds and turn and be healed." And then Isaiah, said, "How long, O Lord?" And he said, "Until cities lie waste without inhabitant and houses without people, and the land is utterly desolate. Until the Lord sends everyone far away, and vast is the emptiness in the midst of the land. Even if a 10th part remains in it, it will be burned again, like a terebinth or an oak whose stump remains standing when it is felled, and the holy seed is its stump." So you can probably see why this passage isn't as popular as the beginning of the story. These are some really harsh and sobering words from God. So what exactly is God saying here? Remember that Isaiah has already been preaching a prophetic message from God, and it's a message of impending judgment because of the people of Judah's sinful idolatry and injustice. But God tells Isaiah here, when you preach this message, these people aren't going to listen. In fact, when they hear you speaking, all they're going to do is close their eyes and shut their ears. They're going to work even harder to avoid comprehending what I have to say. And in doing that, they'll seal their own fate of being conquered and taken into exile. So these are really harsh words, but they're important for us to pay attention to because this is something we all do. We go about our lives, usually trying to do whatever we think is best for ourselves or for our families. But when we're presented with evidence that whatever we are doing, that something we're doing is actually harmful, maybe harmful to the planet or to ourselves or to a certain group of people, our tendency is often to cover our eyes and ears, to ignore the evidence so that we can carry on with our lives in the same way that we always have. But here's the deal. If we are going to survive as a species, and if we're going to create communities where everybody can flourish, we're going to have to be willing to open our eyes and ears and to listen to the prophetic voices that are calling out our injustices, our harmful actions toward our neighbors, and warning us of the impending consequences if we don't change our ways. So this is my challenge to myself and to all of us. When we hear evidence that something we're doing is harmful to other human beings, let's resist the urge to cover our eyes and ears, to not listen. Let's do the hard work of listening and figuring out how we together can change our ways to encourage the flourishing of all people. And I would also encourage you this week to just sit down and read the first 6 chapters of the book of Isaiah. You can do it in one sitting of about 20 minutes. It will be a challenging read, but I think it'll be enriching too. I think these are important words for us to hear in this time that we're living in right now. So that's my challenges for you this week. Thank you for tuning in. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.